Hey, Doctor Who fans, welcome to the Doctor Who A to Z podcast. My name is Alan.
My name's Josh.
Is it? And my name is Ashley.
And introducing Josh Wilson.
That's right.
As who? Who is he?
We'll never know. We'll never
Who
find
is he?
out.
I don't know that I
Never
will
know.
find out.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
never.
Because after this
Never, ever.
episode, who knows if we'll be picked up for another season.
That's right.
All right, so this week we are going to be doing our review of the final episode of season 2, which, as we now know, is the final episode of the Shudigatwa era.
Spoilers, Alan.
Oh, come on, everybody knows.
You could not go online because
Most
the
people knew
BBC just
before they.
shoved her right up front
Yes. Man.
5 minutes after the episode was over with.
Yeah, I don't think they waited that long.
Mm-mm.
They didn't want all those other Facebookers, stealing their thunder. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about the final episode of the season, the reality war. So for folks who are watching, if you are interested, please drop in your comments or questions, your thoughts about the episode, any questions you might have about it, anything that you think you want to stump us, like the point you need figuring out, we'll figure it out with you. So anyway, if you got a comment or question, just drop it in the comments and we'll get right to it. And so let's talk about what our overall impressions were of this episode. This was a whole season thing that really fed into, as Russell likes to do, fed into this last episode. So what did you think of it? Big question, I know.
Oh, this one's a hard one. Like, I think because there's so much that was happening in here, and there's so much. And I think the more important thing is what didn't happen in here, which is also disturbing. I think this is hard. I mean, it's really hard to think about now. I think there were some really good parts of this. We had Jodie show up, which was that I had no clue that was happening. I thought that was a lot of fun. I don't know if I can say anything else that I just loved about it, honestly. I mean, there are some, honestly, I think you finally get Omega, and then you see him for less than 5 minutes, and he eats the Ronnie. Just cut to the chase, right? And you get that, and this is something I realized today, you get, like, let's go back to season 2. You get an emergency temporal shift from the other Ronnie, which we got with our Daleks back in the day, right? And it's almost the same exact thing that we got in the finale of season 2 with those characters. Now there's a lot going on there. We've got Poppy, we've got that story. The problem for me is, and what we do know about this is that there were reshoots in February, January, something like that. And it seems like those reshoots were drastic. The whole end of this story was changed, and it kind of shows from a production point of view. You can see almost the moment where they transitioned into the reshoots. And the story must have changed. The ending of the story must have changed drastically. This.
We're going to get into all of that.
I know, but I know that.
We're talking
but
about overall impressions here, actually.
You know what? These are my raw impressions. This is how I consume media, is I think of big things.
Okay, I get that. But I want to move over to Alan, because I have a sneaking suspicion Alan is not happy from what I've seen him talk about over the last couple of days.
Oh, dear. Well, I watched it again last night. And so my initial impression was that I just thought it was the worst episode I've ever seen, and possibly even worse than Last of the Time Lords, which was terrible, and the ones that were the final two-parter of series 3, which was also terrible, whatever that one was called, the Dobby Doctor and the superhero master and all that crazy stuff. So I really, really did not like it. And there were very few parts of it that I did like. I watched it again last night, and my basic reaction at this point is I just don't care. Like, I don't care about any of the stuff that happened in it. And before we get too far into this, I do want to say for anybody who's watching that might not have heard our show before, we have loved season 2. I just want to be very clear that we are not just totally negative about this episode. We really, really loved season 2 and thought that the first 6 episodes, ranged from really good to fantastic. So, I just feel like a huge letdown in this last two-parter and the last episode particularly. Over to you, Josh.
Okay, well, over to me. So I guess I hate this. I really, really, really hate this because I have to be the one again defending RTD on this damn show because I think I liked it. Now, that's not to say that it was good per se.
Okay.
Let's just make it clear because I was pretty harsh on last week's episode, and I still feel pretty strongly about this. And this episode just does some weird things that just make zero sense and are very disappointing. And yet, as I rewatched it again today, I was fully along with the ride. It might be the RTD final episode of a season that I've enjoyed the most. It is.
Okay.
I have seen Doctor Who regenerations for 20, 30 years now. I've seen a whole bunch of them over and over again. This one is the first one to ever move me to tears, and it not just once. It impacted me pretty well on the first viewing, and I literally did tear up the second time that I watched it today.
Wow.
That's how moving I find, because it is, out of all of these overblown regeneration scenes that we've gotten over, especially in the modern series, none of them have really particularly felt earned to me. But this one feels earned to me. And I think a lot of that goes down to just the emotional weight that Ncuti brings to his doctor, and the way that this doctor has been portrayed as being, all of our doctors have feelings, but this is the one that really wears his emotions on his sleeves.
Mhm.
And it just feels like such a bittersweet, triumphant ending. And God help me, for once, I felt that Marie Gold's score absolutely made me feel something in an ending. And maybe I'm just getting old and crazy in my old age, but everything about that regeneration felt right to me. The heart was in the right place. Everything about the story may have not made a whole lot of sense, and there was lots of things about it that I didn't like, but there were a lot of little moments that I did like.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not saying that it was a great episode by any stretch of the imagination, but I just kind of found myself in with it for whatever it was. As I was thinking, like, if you're making a full meal out of trash, at least make the trash look and make sense on the dinner table. And I felt like that's what this episode was. The setup was trash, everything about it, but yet everything that it did with the ridiculous setup that it had made a logical sense to me. It had good character beats at points in time. I mean, yes, there's complete character assassinations at other points in time, but I think at least the vibe of the story I was with, even if I think there was a lot of bad choices to be made in the story. And I can't believe I'm saying that about an RTD finale.
Well, our good friend Daniel Pierce says, I think the universe is off a degree if Josh is defending RTD.
Seriously, I can't believe here I am doing it.
Well, the doctor did crush reality and change it, and we are one or degrees over. Yeah. I will say, though, I do, as you say that, Josh, I do agree. I thought that was a very meaningful regeneration scene, and I do believe that it encapsulates the Ncuti's doctor really well, and it starts, or it ends exactly where it started when he came out of David Tennant with that idea. It's just like, I've had this time, I've done this, I've done all these things, and then that wraps up, and he has a peaceful regeneration. There's none of this, I don't want to go. He's like, it's time. He's done this. I've sacrificed myself for a reason. And I think Ruby says it where she said, you wouldn't do that. You did this for me. You wouldn't leave one person behind. Why would you do that now? And he realizes that he has to do that. And I do think, so I do think you're right. I do think it's meaningful, and it does that, and it does that well. I don't know. I think the problem is getting there.
Well, I mean, again, I think that last 15 minutes is doing a lot of heavy lifting for me, because again, the episode ends in a good place for me, which probably makes me feel better about the episode as a whole. Whereas, again, if it had the original ending, I don't know where I'd be at this point right now. But again, there is just so much that I love about this regeneration, because again, it feels earned. It is a conscious decision that Doctor has made, and it is just there to save a single life. And I love that kind of stuff where the Doctor makes that sacrifice for one person, because one person is just as important as an entire world or an entire universe. I love that. I eat that up. It just feels so right for the character to me. And the way that this is just framed, it's because, and I went back after I watched the episode a second time. I went back and I watched every single regeneration. They stuck it up on YouTube, so I went through and watched them all. And especially in the modern series, all those regenerations, they are so overblown with funeral dirge music and choirs just singing out. I mean, like, especially the stupid Tennant one, just absolutely god awful. How it makes you feel like it is a funeral, and it's just supposed to be like this soapy, whatever the word is, over dramatic like ending. And this doesn't feel like that. The music is almost triumphant with the choice that he's doing and the way that he's going out with a smile. I love it so much. It is so moving to me. I mean, I just don't know what it is. It's just like the ending, just my heart grew 3 times its size and melted. I loved it that much.
Wow.
Another thing that happens in this leading up to that is RTD did something that he likes to do, is he wraps up an era, and you see everyone you have met, every significant character that you have met in the last 2 seasons and the Christmas special. Every one of them is mentioned. And if you go back to David Tennant regenerating again, you see he goes back and sees all of his companions, and he makes sure they're okay, and he does this. But this does it differently and better. I think seeing each of those, because 2 of them are just there. Then you've got the Time Hotel, I can't think of her name. Anita, that's right. And then to wrap all that up, you have Joy at the very end, and you see the star, you see all of this. A great way to have that character without having to spend money to bring in the actress, by the way. But you have every significant character show up in this season, but it's not done in such a way, or in this episode, but it's not done in such a way where you feel like it's cheap. I think it's done more tactfully than maybe some of the other ones have been done.
You know, there had been rumors for quite a while that Shooty was exiting, and 2 episodes ago, when we all of a sudden saw Poppy, I thought, okay, it's going to happen, because they're bringing in a character from the episode from his very first season, the first episode of that first season. And then you get, spoiler alert, you get her and Susan the next week. And and then I thought, okay, well, they're going to do it. They got a unit in place. They've got all, Ruby and Belinda are both there. And then at the beginning of this episode, the first person you see is Anita. And I thought, yep, this is a regeneration episode.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just, God, another reason why it is movement to me is it feels so soon, and I'm going to miss Shooty so much. It's just I've really come to enjoy him, and I really felt like he was finding his groove, and again, I don't think that the original plan. I mean, we'll talk about what the reaches whatnot, but there was no way his original plan was to go out in this season. It is only the logistics of the shooting and the Disney deal and contracts. That's the only reason why he's not doing it again.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating. And again, like just from like a story point, like it's sad that he's gone after we've not really had a chance to really spend a whole lot of time with him. And I would like to do more. And that makes me sad watching this story. It also frustrates the hell out of me as a fan, knowing the stuff that goes on behind the scenes and whatnot.
Yeah.
That leads into a lot of the frustration with this episode. Again, I think the ending of it, again, is what really puts me over the top as far as enjoying it. And for something that was obviously shot on the fly, like just a couple of months ago, trying to get everything in order for this regeneration, like it's amazing. And maybe that's what we need. We just need Russell working under a constraint of time to try to throw something together in order to get something a little bit magical out of him, because it's just it saves the episode really for me.
But I think that's one of the interesting things, Alan. Like you said, everything's set up in a way where it would be a regeneration, but it for everything we can see is it wasn't originally, right? Like Anita was going to be in that.
Absolutely not.
And Poppy was going to be in it. And Susan was going to be in it. Susan, I think, was going to be in it more.
Well, I think that's the biggest problem with this episode is this rewrite completely eliminates Susan. And what the hell is that? Like, that is like, if you want to hate on this episode because of that, I'm completely on board with you, because it makes zero sense to be teasing all the Susan stuff and then not even have her in the last episode. Like, what is going on with that? That is ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
Agreed. And to have where you could have, well, we'll get there.
We might just have to get there because we keep saying we'll get there. Yeah. But while we get there, let me get this question. This is actually a series of questions from Patrick Anderson, who asks, what was the point of Poppy? What happens to Ronnie number 2? Can she regenerate? What happened to Susan? What was the point of bringing Carol Ann Ford back if just for a cameo or two? All very good questions. Apparently, the original ending for this thing was going to be them at a club, a party or whatever, celebrating their victory. And you see Susan in the crowd. She is sitting up above and looking down on them, just kind of watching what's going on.
She was going to be the cliffhanger leading into season 3. Is what she was going to be. That was the point of bringing her back, which I guess, I don't know, we may never get to, unfortunately, which is just a damn shame.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot that has been sort of like coming for the last 2 seasons that we're not going to get.
Oh, there are so many plot points that we never got back to that we may never get to now.
We'll never.
If we don't.
Because at this point, they haven't even started shooting a season 3.
No.
So it's going to be.
They haven't even commissioned a season 3.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's going to be at least 2 years before we have a season 3. And I don't think that we're going to pick up any of these story threads 2 years out.
No.
And then start afresh. Just like we usually do.
I mean, I don't know. We'll get to the very end, I guess, because that's going to be a big talking point too. But there were so many things that you can tell, especially in that last section of rewrite, where Russell is like, okay, well, I've got all the stuff that I had planned and I'm not being renewed. I'm going to just throw everything out here to make everybody remember it. So maybe they'll clamor to get me renewed.
Yep. That's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah,
it really is. It's like a desperation. Not unlike that very last scene we got.
That very last scene is the ultimate act of desperation. But God. I mean,
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, Ashley.
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about Shooty obviously not coming back, but also if the show's not recommissioned, then that's RTD maybe not coming back. And I'm not saying I can't imagine the BBC not doing something, but it's not going to be quick. I don't think, unless a streamer picks it up. If Disney does pick it up, then that's fine. It's not looking like that's probably going to happen. So yeah, I think you're right. I think I think Russell, even it's kind of a last ditch effort for him, and in a way, this acts as a bookend, a perfect book. Well, I don't know if a perfect
It's
bookend,
not a perfect bookend.
a
Don't
good
try that.
bookend.
It's
Well,
not
no,
even a
no,
good
no,
bookend.
a perfect
People
bookend. in
people
that the
wanting to
first
call
person
this a
that you
bookend and put it with symmetry, that's just absolutely BS.
the
It's
first
just
person that you
absolute
see and the
BS.
last person that you see are the same person.
So what? That doesn't make it a bookend.
I
just makes it you
understand
see
that,
the
but I'm
same
saying I
person
think
twice.
that's where we were going. Like I think that's
I don't-
where he was going in his mind. Where if nothing
No,
else,
no.
I have that.
Where he was going in his mind was, what is the one thing I can do to get people talking, good or bad, to try to drum up interest? And that's what
Right.
I'm doing. That's
Fair enough.
exactly what that
Fair
is.
enough.
Right. And I tell you, after 2 years ago, well, 3 years ago, when we got that very same thing with Tenet, oh man, I really hated.
But that made sense, right? Because that was an anniversary. It made sense at least within some point because it was an anniversary.
Yeah.
You're putting a lot of work on the word "makes sense" there. Actually, it doesn't make sense other
I don't
than
know. I
the
think
fact
it
you want to
does.
bring somebody back for an anniversary, and this is one way to do it.
Right. Have them be the star of the show rather than the guest star. Anyway, so Patrick also has this other question, and we didn't talk about what the point of Poppy is, but he also wants to know, do we have gravity back as a result of the resetting the universe 1 degree? Possibly. I've kind of always felt like that since they continued the Mavity joke throughout both seasons, that whatever his end game was going to have something to do with Mavity being its starting point, and we would know that it's come to its end point when they start saying gravity again.
I mean, like, I think he had a 3-year kind of plan in mind. And going back to what was the point of Poppy, like, I think Poppy being brought in earlier is a remnant of the original endings. I think in the original shot, like, Poppy was supposed to be like, I think Poppy disappears, but when we see Susan's supposed to have Poppy with her, and that kind of plays into what's going on with her or something along those lines. That at least I've heard that.
Right.
So I don't know if that's actual. I mean, again, nobody really knows. No one's seen it, but I think that was just supposed to play into more with the lore of what's going on with Susan, and maybe it has a connection to the Time Lords, that she would technically be part Time Lord, all that kind of stuff, which I, got kind of redone when they had to rework the ending.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, for that ending, when we have all of Unit together, I don't know how much of that was original and how much was reshoot, but Bonnie wasn't there, and they basically included her in like a little Unit Zoom call. And I'm wondering if she just wasn't available to come back in February to do the reshoots.
It has to be,
because
you can feel, as Ashley was saying, you can feel the absolute disconnect of the joining. Like, from the moment they go into the TARDIS and Poppy disappears, I don't know if that was partly original film, but anything from that point on was reshoots. You can just tell. And in fact, if you look at Millie's hair, you can kind of see it is actually a slightly different in a couple of scenes in the TARDIS, and then once they go back to Unit HQ, you can definitely tell that that's the reshoot.
Well, that's only because there are little glitches from the universe being 1 degree
obviously,
off.
Obviously, right.
It's the color, whatever the color it was, the color teal, and her hair. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what else do we have that we can talk about? Well, I want to get to Omega and the Ronnie.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Omega and the Ronnie, because I had a lot of I still got problems with Omega. I think we all do, but I'm going to be completely honest. As much as I complained about the Ronnie not feeling like the Ronnie, and I still don't know if she's 100% like the Ronnie, but it made it work more for me in this episode. I mean, the way that when she confronts Unit and her haughty superiority and like genetic superiority that she has against them, as she's talking about how they're all little creatures compared to Time Lords, that felt very Ronnie-ish to me.
Agreed. And that also helped, because we were talking about this last week when nothing about what we were seeing from the Ronnie made any sense from what we knew of the Ronnie back in 85 or whatever. And then you get this episode, and I do feel like she was a lot more Ronnie-ish, but you also have Mel, who we're like, does Russell not even know what the Ronnie's supposed to be? But then he feeds these lines to Mel where she's like, says exactly who the Ronnie is. And you're like, well, okay, so he knows. So why aren't we seeing it? But I do feel like this week, and I really think that Archie Panjabi was fantastic.
Yeah.
I really liked her a lot. And the fact that she was disposed of so immediately is dumb.
But I kind of love that because I think that's perfect for the Ronnie. Because the Ronnie is, I mean, let's be honest, for as much as we're talking about, oh, does you feel like they're Ronnie, does it not feel like they're Ronnie? And the Ronnie is a completely nonsensical, disposable, like, character, really.
Well,
I mean,
literally, yeah.
Right. And the fact that once she serves a purpose, she gets gobbled up. The other one says, you know, screw this, I'm off. I found that just
emergency
hilarious.
temporal shift.
I am interested in seeing Anita Dobson, if we ever do, seeing Anita Dobson again as a proper Ronnie and not this like precursor setup thing that she's been doing for 2 seasons. But at the same time, I have to wonder, since we basically had a regeneration scene with her, but she still exists because of bi-generation, does she regenerate again?
Who knows?
Is that the end of the line for the Ronnie? I mean, I know that the answer is nobody knows except for Russell. And he will make it up.
And how many times has the master been killed and absolutely destroyed and come back? That doesn't matter at all.
Here's another thing, though. Thinking of Mel and the Ronnie, was Mel brought back into the series? Did he bring Mel back into this just so he could
just
have
because of the Ronnie? I had not thought of that.
I wonder, as you guys were talking, I was thinking, I'm like, because everyone's just like, Mel's a weird choice, and you know he wrote this a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, he's talked about that. I mean, and it was written together, written kind of as one season that was split in 2. I wonder if he was just like, I'm gonna bring the Ronnie back, and if I bring the Ronnie back, I'm gonna bring Mel back. Like, and
I think that's just a happy coincidence because
it might be. Maybe he brought Mel back and then said, "What can I do with Mel? Oh, I can bring the Ronnie back."
Right. I mean, and they'd already brought back just about everybody else in the previous season of their Chibnalls. So Mel was like the last one, and Mel
she was back in that season too, though. Like, she came back in that.
But Mel is an RTD type of character. She just aligns with what RTD likes and wants to do perfectly, as opposed to anybody else. She is campy and, you know, a singing icon, and that is just, you know, RTD gobbles that up.
Just like Omega.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead, Al.
I was just gonna say, I feel like last week we had all this buildup to who it is that the Ronnie is trying to get to, and then it's Omega, the greatest of all Time Lords. And I was really, and first of all, I was not happy about bringing Omega back in that way anyway. I just don't think we needed Susan back and the Ronnie back and Omega, absolutely. All that stuff. It was just too much.
To be fair, we didn't get Susan back, so there you go.
No, I mean, exactly. But the fact that they brought him, and I know everyone has said this online in every chat group this has been said, but the fact that they brought him back as a giant CGI monster, what the God.
I've got no defense on that. I'm with you 100%. No defense.
He was literally there for like 30 seconds before Shooty pulls out his Prince guitar and shoots him with a like the laser, the strength of 1 billion supernovas or whatever it was he said. I'm like, that's just dumb.
It is dumb. It's completely dumb. I mean, you guys remember, I told you last week that I thought that Omega was just a misdirect. There's only, there's a reason why if you are talking about him and you're reusing voice lines from Big Finish stories, you're not actually really bringing that character back. And they didn't.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like surprised they did it that way because that's kind of what I was expecting. It was worse than I thought by making him a CGI monster and then shooting him with lasers to get rid of it, not even being clever.
I mean, I don't know how you would have done it anyway, because you can't have him come back flouncing around in those outfits that he wore in the 70s and the 80s.
And why not?
Right.
Well, I mean, they updated Time Lord dress. Why couldn't they? I don't know.
Yeah. They could.
I mean, you know what they should have done? They should have cast Eric Roberts and brought in the TV movie costumes and just had that be Omega. That would have been amazing. Can you imagine? Just they open that thing and Eric Roberts just comes in out just as wearing his robes.
And
would be amazing.
And now Omega is dressed for the occasion.
For the occasion.
Again, there's no
Peter
point.
Davidson. Why not? If you're bringing everyone else back, make Peter Davidson Omega.
But that would be it. That would have been a billion times worse. I know you love it, you dumb idiot, but no, it would be the absolute worst. It's just,
oh god,
Omega should not have been in this story to begin with. The fact that they just threw him in there and disposed of him in no time is fine, because it was always an awful idea. It was executed as awfully, and at least it was done quickly, and we didn't have to focus on the rest of this.
But again, it feels like RTD is just checking off boxes. Everyone says the Ronnie and Omega are coming back every year, so let me just give them both. Check. I've done it. I've done that. And I've finished my run in Doctor Who.
And Susan. So we got all three of them. The only one that we didn't get is the Valiant.
So awful.
It is. Okay. I have a really interesting comment from Erica Laurie, who says, personally, I like seeing so many middle-aged, powerful women in this series.
Absolutely.
I agree with that 100%. I hadn't thought about that, but yes, that is an absolute strength of this.
Man, Mel, it was so great in this episode from the moment that she rides her goddamn motorcycle into Unit XQ and jumps off like a boss. And it's like just disgusted that I was made a housewife. I'm like, hell yeah, you were. And then getting up in the Ronnie's face, phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely. But in last year's finale, Mel was just off the chart great. She was the Mel that we should have gotten in the 80s. And I'm very, very glad that they gave her some really great moments in this one too. Not enough, but some good ones. All right.
Yeah, and also I do love the fact, just that she said, I've not thought of you at one time, like to the Ronnie. Like, really, I mean, Mel kind of like, she's like, well, yeah, you have. But Mel kind of wins that argument. Like, Mel's the stronger of the two. And I love that, because the thing is, the Ronnie has thought of Mel many, many times. And that was the fun thing that I took from that, is that the Ronnie is vindictive and vengeful, and she's been thinking for like hundreds of years, thousands of years, how am I gonna, like, if I ever see that redhead again, I'm gonna do whatever. I mean, that's the cool thing about that. Like, Mel hasn't thought of her, but the Ronnie, this superior being, thinks of her every day.
Such a great scene, and just I love the Ronnie preening in front of everybody, and Mel getting up in her face, and I love when she's trying to give off her grand plan, and there was you can use the daughter. It's got Time Lord DNA, but she's like, but it's human, and the whole room just lays like, oh my gosh, she's one of those types, and such a great moment deflating her.
And that's when the doctor says, I'm half human.
Right. It won't happen with RTD. It should happen. But anyway, Patrick Anderson says that about Omega, because I say Omega because they said it both ways in this episode.
They did.
Omega, a waste of a villain and completely not in line with Omega's history.
Yeah. I mean, I think finding a dead body would have been just as useful for the plot point.
Yes, of course. It'd have been so interesting. You don't need the CGI animated corpse thing. But anyway, I'm interested to see where, if we ever get the Ronnie again, I'm interested to see where it goes with Anita Dobson driving that car. I think that's going to be really interesting.
She is so good, and yet feels so wasted in the role. And I never quite understood why she had to be made to appear so subservient to the other one.
Yes, I agree.
It's just that didn't feel right. I mean, I think he tried to undermine that, the fact she's always griping about it behind, like she's not in the same room as her, but she's so like muling and subversive to the other one, and it just doesn't feel like right for the Ronnie, but I think she could be a wonderful Ronnie. Like the bit when she, buggers off,
Yeah.
and she has that wonderful line where she's like, well, so much for the two Ronnies, which is such a great line. And leaves. I think she could be really good if actually given the focus, because it's just a weird position they put that character in.
And since we were talking about strong middle-aged women, I want to bring up Kate, because again, this has been a very good season for Kate. And I mean, when I say season, she was in Lucky Day and she was in these last two. And I think that RTD has really done right by her character.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree. Everybody loves Kate.
Everybody loves
Kate. No one's
Well,
going to say anything bad about her.
Well, I think one thing I think I think Kate, the thing is, Ledford Stewart, those are some big shoes to walk into. Nicholas Courtney doing that, and then someone saying, well, someone's got to fill this role. Like, we want to incorporate this, and this was seasons ago, right? She's been in here for a long time. She's been doing this, and she owns that role very well, and it's a hard thing to do, and I absolutely love her. I mean, I think every time she's on screen, she owns it. I think it's great.
Okay, a couple of things from Patrick. First, he says, how was the Ronnie able to break the fourth wall?
Absolutely something I would love to have explained. Everything about Mrs. Flood and her appearances makes zero sense. I mean, they try to explain, like, well, they're looking for the doctor and tracking his movements, and it was her job to keep track of him and know what's going on. And the fact that she wasn't there at Christmas is what, lets him escape the plan. So I guess that almost works. How and why she's able to spend so much time being neighbors and doing that for so long, I don't know. It seems like that would drive you crazy, but the whole fourth wall breaking never explained, and I knew it wasn't going to be, and that's very frustrating, because it's just why do it?
Right, agreed. All right, more Patrick. He says, I think it would have been better if Conrad was found out to be the master of stories, or the god of stories. Let's say that, because people have been talking about him as being the master, and I swear to God, if that had happened, I would have just lost it. So the god of stories, possibly.
I mean, if we had focused that story as the god of stories versus, the Ronnie being behind it, I think that would be better. I think that him just being this guy who just happened to be in the right place at the right time to be of use to the Ronnie is perfect for that character in that position, because he is absolutely worthless as a person. I mean, the Ronnie knows and acknowledges this. The reason that they're using him is because his ideas are so bad that it's going to fuel this little experiment that they are doing, because people are going to want to rebel against it. I like him just being this little nothing of a man who is just trying to, oh yes, mistress, well, I'll do anything for you, mistress, but showing just how little his beliefs actually are,
Yeah, and I've misunderstood his question. He is talking about the master of the land of fiction, because his next comment is that it would have been a great callback to a second Doctor story and would have made all the other craziness make more sense. Well, I don't know, Patrick, if you listen to on our show on a regular basis, but you are saying exactly what Josh has been saying for weeks and weeks.
It should never have been the Ronnie. Mrs. Flood should have been revealed as the master of the land of fiction. It would make the fourth wall breaking make sense. You could have done a whole different version of this story that I would have absolutely loved if it had been that instead of the Ronnie, because it would just make much more sense to me.
Yep. Our friend Nicole says, so sad about this version of both Omega and the Ronnie. Yes, agreed. And we've talked about that a bit now, but
though I kind of came around on the Ronnie.
Oh yeah.
But for being, again, the Ronnie as a character is, I'm not really interested in her whatsoever anyway. But as far as being a version of the Ronnie, this one I came around on.
Yeah, me too. I just feel like she was treated, I mean, for all the setup that we got for 2 seasons, and particularly in Interstellar and in last week's episode, for her to just be disposed of so quickly and so easily, it was just frustrating for me.
I get that. I find it hilarious personally, but I totally get being frustrated by that. I
Oh.
get it.
Yeah, Nicole's talking about the Ronnie's death.
Or death.
Yeah.
Again, I understand that, because it is just kind of, but at the same time, it's almost like, I mean, I can't ascribe intent to Russell, but in me, if I want to interpret it as like, yes, this was a character who is the Ronnie, and who cares about the Ronnie, and now that we've, you know, enacted her plan and she doesn't have anything less to do, I'm just going to immediately dispose of her in the most ignoble way possible and have her be eaten. That's just like a perfect end to.
Just don't bring her back if that's what you're going to do with her. You know, don't bother. Just, oh my God.
But again, you got to tick that box off for Ashley. Ashley says he's got to do it because everybody wants him to do it. So there you go.
Right. Right.
Real quick, let's talk about like the action adventure setup of Unit HQ turning into a giant GI Joe base.
Right.
That's all. When I saw it, I was just like, this is like like a good live action GI Joe. It's just like just guns come out of it and they start turning it in a turret. It's like you have the Doctor riding around on the Ronnie's hover cycle thing, and it's just like that is exciting to me, but I just don't know that it fits. Like, I don't know that it fits what has been set up to this point. The tone shifts as soon as Kate gets out her pirate wheel and starts turning the base around. I mean, it's awesome. Don't get me wrong. It looks incredible.
I think that's just, hey,
we
got to do something big and flashy for Disney, and we know an American audience will watch those. Let's throw a bunch of laser guns and some unnecessary giant bone monsters in here.
I will say this. My son was watching this with me. He doesn't watch a lot of Doctor Who, but he sat down with me. He was looking at me. He's like, is this Doctor Who? This is awesome. Like, so, I mean, it hits the demographic, like, and he's just like, they're just like using that as, why have I not been watching this show? So then I showed him after this, he's like, what else can I watch? I'm like, let's watch Dalek. Like, the episode Dalek, which he liked quite a bit.
Did he stick around much for the second half of this episode? Because you talk about a different episode from that.
I think he was there because he was watching my response. I it'd be like, what? They did it. What? No, they're not. They are. No, what? So I think he was watching me more than he was watching the show in the second part of it.
Okay, a couple of more comments. Erica says the finale felt like they were trying to rush and shove a bunch of things together to make some grand story, but it felt forced. Agreed.
Yeah. Shoving all those elements in there, that's what you're going to get.
Right.
You can't have Omega and the Ronnie and, every companion and unit and everything together without feeling it like you got to jam some stuff in there.
Right.
But this whole season has felt like that, right? I mean, they've been jamming. They've been jamming longer stories into 45 minutes. They're jamming this long thing into 8 episodes, and they're not giving it the proper. They're not giving us enough clues. Like that Ronnie thing just kind of comes out of nowhere, and then they're just like, and then they set up. Well, we know that, oh my God, it doesn't matter really, but there are things that should have been set up weeks ago. And this whole season, while it has been great, one of our critiques have been like, I wish it had been a little longer. There just was a little too much that wasn't able to be done in this. If it had been a little longer, I feel like they're trying to shove hour-long stories into 45-minute time.
Well, I mean, like, I would agree to the point where if you're talking about this overall like season-long arc, then yes, they definitely are shoving it in the back couple of episodes a lot. Like, could have used more episodes to spread it out, but I don't think any individual story feels like it's being overstuffed to the point of not, being able to fit the runtime until we get to this big grand finale resolution to the season-long story. I don't think any other episode really has felt like it has been, overly jam packed in with materials. The problem is just is that, you know, rather than taking time in those stories to advance the season long story arc, you shove them all in the last episodes.
Yeah. Okay. We were talking about the big battle scene with the unit headquarters, and Daniel says they had to spend that Disney money since they aren't getting it anymore.
I guess we'll see.
That's right.
Yeah.
We don't know yet. They're supposed to. They've been saying for ages now that a decision will be made after the completion of the broadcast of this season. So, you know, we should know.
It's not happening.
I think the decision's made. I don't think they're going to announce it until the spinoff finishes.
Right.
So
that's
whenever
possible.
that will be.
Right. That is possible. Yeah, I'm sure the decision.
Unless it's a positive. If they are going to continue, they will announce it. If they're not, then we're not going to hear it until after that, I think.
All right. We're down to the last quarter of our show. I do want to talk about Belinda.
Yeah, I also want to talk about Belinda too, because again, as I said, this episode, I don't know if I would qualify it as good as much as I like the ending, but there's a lot of bad things. Number one being where's Susan, but number two, the worst offender is Belinda. I think she has really been disserved by these last two episodes.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like she had so much potential at the very beginning of the season and was great in those first few episodes, and then it just seemed to taper off halfway through the season. And she was like, in this last episode, she was literally shoved in a box for half the episode. And I just feel like, you know, she
well, I mean,
it was all sort of taken away from her.
Exactly. I think that I've not had a problem with her. Like I like the concept and the setup in the first episodes more than what she became to be, as I tried to make her more of a traditional companion. But I mean, I still think the spark was still there. But you saying that her agency was taken away in these last two episodes is 100%. She is turned into somebody who she's not. And it feels very weird. I mean, and again, I get what they were doing with the idea of her being so into the fact that like nothing's going to stop you, stop me from keeping this child safe. It's my child. I mean, and I, you know, as a parent, I get that. But it's weird to just kind of have that thrust upon her in the last two episodes, and that becomes her defining trait in these last episodes. It's such a weird disconnect from what we've seen earlier, and it doesn't really feel like the same character at points to me.
Agreed. Okay, so Nicole chimes in and says, I'm so angry about Belinda. They retconned her into motherhood and literally sidelined her in a plot box for a chunk of the episode, or for a chunk of the plot. Not that motherhood is bad. It just came out of nowhere. That's exactly what I was going to say. I don't feel like, you know, obviously, you know, someone's choice to be a mother is not a bad choice. There's nothing wrong with having a character who embraces motherhood. That's the problem, though. She was not that character for the first 2/3 or 3/4 of this season. She was an independent person who had a career, who lived in a house that she shared with however many other roommates, and all that was yanked away from her in that last episode. Now, I've seen people online say that what happened is that was not right. That was the 1 degree off. And now she's reset back to what she had always been before that. We just didn't see that stuff before. I don't know, though.
See, I think that's, you know, trying to wallpaper over the cracks. It's just because we're not shown that. And I mean, again, if you squint, she's always been about like my family, right? She's always talking about she's got to get back to her family and got to do this and got to do that. So like her being into a family member is believable. It's just that this one kind of comes out of nowhere, and that kind of supersedes everything else she's been about that we've seen up to this point in time. Yeah. And I get the point. I like the idea of, you know, just because this child isn't real in quotation marks because it was made, it's now she's here, she's real now, and we're saving. Like, I get that, and I agree with that. It's just, it feels weird to have Belinda be the one that is so adamant about that when we had not seen anything like that from her during this season.
And I think you could have done it pretty easily just by having her say something like, something feels missing. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Something's not right. Like those kinds of things. There's a part of me that's gone and I don't know what it is. Little lines like that, which would have added to the mystery, because the mystery that we had, any piece of mystery that we had was just kind of like, oh, Conrad told him who Belinda was, or there's something, and they kind of address it with the end where they said, well, when you touched me in the thing and pulled me out of that time, the time thing, there was a baby, remember, and all this, and like, remember, it was there, and it was there, but there's nothing to it. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, like you guys said, and it's not addressed.
Right. And I think that the biggest change there is that at the beginning of the season, she wanted to go home because she did not want to travel. She wanted to be back in her regular life. At the end of the season, she needs to get back home because she has to let her mom go to her concert. So there's somebody there to watch the baby. That's such a huge difference in the mindset and the motivation of that character. And I just find it uncomfortable.
But there's also a weird disconnecting whiplash, because before the baby disappears, she's all like, I'm all ready to go adventuring.
That's true too.
And,
yes,
and
exactly.
that's such a weird whiplash of moment. And I get, like, what we're also supposed to be seeing is once the baby is gone and she's all about like, let's go have adventures again, which I think that's supposed to make us not feel right about her. But she was already doing that with the baby. It was just a weird disconnect of it. Again, you get like whiplash between what she's always espoused to now she's changing it, and the doctor's all happy that you finally come around, but that doesn't necessarily feel earned, and then we undo it anyway. It's weird. It's just odd.
Okay, a couple of more things. And Nicole wants to know what happened to her original roommates. Well, nothing, because they're
probably off. They got another roommate now.
Right.
Now that reality is adjusted 1 degree.
Belinda bailed on us. We got to find somebody to cover her part of the rent. And then Patrick says, how the hell did the doctor know who she was at the start of the first episode? He got that from Conrad in Lucky Day. Even though Conrad didn't name her by name, he mentioned something. There was
he mentioned her name.
He mentioned her name yet? He's like, have you met Belinda yet?
That's right. Right. So that's where that comes from. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. Is there anything that we haven't talked about?
We haven't talked about the last scene. Again, I was talking about the mistakes and the errors this episode makes that makes me mad, then really brings it down for me, which is, like not using Susan and doing something to Belinda. But the biggest, most grievous error, mistake this episode makes is it brings me this close to the word looms being mentioned in a Doctor Who episode on TV, and yet just swerves away at the last minute. Could have just given me looms, damn it.
You'll get them. I feel like whatever this change is that has made Time Lords sterile, we're leading up to looms.
Well, maybe, but the whole thing, like, they make the whole sterilization thing be about
looms.
About the whole sterilization thing was a result of what the Master did in the Whittaker era, but they reveal that, but they could have always been sterile. And Dr. Chris said, well, we've never been able to have children. We've had to genetically engineer them. That just would have been too perfect for me.
Right.
And I think that brings a question too. Like when that reality shifted, I wonder if Gallifrey came back. I mean, they could easily do that. But I think the other thing that we have to talk about is Jodie, right?
Holy cow. I was so excited to see Jodie come back in for two reasons. One, I genuinely loved Jodie's doctor, and I was so glad to see her again. But the other reason is because the two doctors who pissed the most people off put them in a scene together without exactly, as Ashley says, do the right thing. And they did the right thing. They put the two most divisive characters in the scene together.
I loved seeing her because we get more characterization and believability in the writing in 3 minutes of her on the screen here than we did in the entire Chibnall era, which I love. She was so great in these 3 minutes.
Yeah, she was.
Here's the one thing. So I loved that scene, and I loved Jody showing up. This is a rewrite like that. I don't think that was part of the original,
No.
obviously, because it was with
You're
the
right,
regeneration
right.
and stuff.
Right.
And I have to think that with everything leading up, even if they were rewriting and changing things, at some point Russell was like, hopefully, was like, who am I going to put in the TARDIS? Oh, we could put Susan there. Susan would have made sense there too, right? Maybe she just
Absolutely.
wasn't available for the reshoots. I don't know, but surely
What
that
else has
was.
she got going on? Come on.
I don't know. Grandkids. I don't know.
True.
But I'm that said, so glad we got Jodie. It was such a great way to do that. I wonder though if having another doctor show up right as you're regenerating takes something away from it. I mean, I guess we kind of got that with Capaldi with the first doctor.
That's true, but it's not nearly as bad as what we got from Tennant to Gatwa. I feel like
that's true. That's
this
true.
is
I mean,
just
the thing is, like, it's so, again, one of the things I loved about the regeneration is that it's not like being overly done as sad, and having the doctor in the TARDIS alone and making like sad faces. Just, I mean, look at that Tennant regeneration. That's the only thing you got to look at. It's just that's exactly what it is. Putting another doctor in there so the doctor has someone to talk to and be like, hey, it was okay because I became you and you're going to become somebody else. The cycle goes on, and don't be afraid of it. I think that's just a wonderfully touching moment.
Yep, I agree. I loved it. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well,
we got to wrap up. Go ahead.
I've said this before, but I do think RTD is still not apologizing, like the opposite of apologizing, just like embracing the Chibnall era so much. And I think we only get the things that we get in this season because of the Chibnall era. Instead of ignoring some of the things that really could easily be ignored, they've been embraced. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's where we're at. And I think this is while I love Jodie, having her there still kind of celebrates that Chibnall era. Which is weird.
And that mention of I should say I love you to Yaz.
Yeah. Again,
fans have wanted
more emotional resonance in the character than anything Chibnall ever did.
Okay, quick comment from Nicole. Then we're gonna rate. Then we're gonna do the last.
We got to
talk about Rose. Hang on. Okay, so Nicole says also there's a lot hinging on Poppy, who was a character that we barely have any attachment to as the audience. So it just felt flat to me. I agree with that 100%. Okay.
I mean, I did want to touch that in just 1 second. Again, I think that's kind of the point is it doesn't matter who you are, how important you are, whether you have an attachment to them or not, the doctor will gladly sacrifice themselves for you. And so I don't have any problem with that whatsoever.
Okay. Billy Piper. That was the worst. When they announced that RTD was coming back as showrunner, I was like, this is the worst thing ever because I didn't like him that much the first time around, but also it's regressive. It is not moving forward. It's moving backwards. And he's going to do nothing but hire all his old people back. And that's exactly what he did. And we finally moved on from that into the Gatwa era. And then by God, he brings Billy Piper back. And I know she's not going to be the doctor, but.
And I mean, it really does reek of desperation. It really is a desperate move. But I mean, the thing is, if things are as dire as what it seems like they are, like, I get it. Like, who else would you put on that screen in order to get people talking and get interest and maybe get enough people invested in whether they want to hate watch it or they love Billy Piper? Yep. She's the one that would get that going the most. So I get it. But again, it feels very mercenary and very desperate because it is obviously a move to only, not necessarily for story reasons, but just to try to save this show. And it reeks of J&T stunt casting, and it is just absolutely not what I want to see, even if I do understand why the choice was made.
But that's exactly what I said when they brought Tennant back, and when they brought Russell back. It's desperation. They're trying to save a show that's in trouble. And 3 years down the road, it's in trouble again, possibly worse than it was before. And they're doing the same stunt again. Oh, it just makes me crazy.
Not to mention, she breaks the fourth wall in her first line. So there we go. Talk about that.
But I think other doctors have done that too.
No, it makes you just
Maybe.
saying hello.
I mean,
that's
even
just,
Colin did that.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, you know.
kind of, yeah.
All right, let's give it a rating. How are we going to rate this one as an individual episode? Oh, hang on. Daniel says, or she was saying hello to Joy.
Yeah, I thought about that too. That's a
Anyway,
possibility.
okay. So let's very quickly rate it.
I mean, I don't know. It's I just have to talk this through. Anybody have an active rating ready to go? Because
Yeah, sure. I'll do one. I'm going to give it a 3 because I really dislike this episode. I don't like any of the choices made other than bringing back Jody. I just don't think it worked at all. It was crazy. It was chaotic. And I was all going to give it a 2. But in our discussion tonight and in rewatching it last night, I have raised my bar a little bit. So I will generously and magnanimously offer it a 3 on my 10-point scale. Ooh. That's
I'll
me,
jump
the
in.
Greek-
I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
I think it's a I don't know. This is tough. I think I've raised mine a little bit too. I think it's above average. I would watch it again. It as a single episode. Like it is what it is. I think it's fun. I mean, it's got some fun parts in it. Some of it
Yeah.
just really drags it down. But I
God,
think after talking to having Josh, what he was saying about the regeneration, I think that it sums up the era so well, and it does Shooty well, and it does that kind of ending well, and I think that's important. So I think I'm going to give it a 6. I think it is above average. I was going to go lower, but I as we've kind of talked through it, I feel better about it.
I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to give it a 4. I'm going to raise it up another point because Shooty was wonderful in this episode. And I think we got some dimension from him and his character that we've not ever seen in previous episodes. I feel like he was so doctorish in so much of this episode. So I'm going to raise it up to a 4. Boy, I'm in a very generous mood tonight.
I mean, the thing is, I did find this episode to be eminently watchable, even if I don't think that it is good. And I think I probably, if I had to pick between rewatching this and rewatching like the Robot Revolution, I would watch this over Robot Revolution. So does that mean that I rate it higher? I don't know. I have to go back and do a whole reorganization of my ratings for this season.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Because this thing's just kind of all out of whack, I think. Gonna have to redo it, but I know 6.5 I think sounds good. That kind of splits the difference because I do like it. I don't think it's great. 6 to 6.5. I'm gonna give it a 6.5 tentatively until I get a chance to kind of reorganize my whole rating system. But I think 6.5 feels right to me at this point because again, I love that ending so much, and it's all being held up by the ending because the first half is just tosh and it makes no sense with some great moments thrown into it, some great characterization. The story itself is ridiculous, but the ending just saves the story for me. I love that regeneration so much. It really is great. So yeah, I'll give it a 6.5 for now.
All right. So Josh, super quick. You are going to take our viewers to Josh's spinoff media corner. So what do you got?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you watch this episode, you're disappointed by Omega because he ends up being a big nothing burger in the story. But if you do want to revisit and see some Omega, you can go over to Big Finish, and there's a story called, weirdly, Omega by Nev Fountain. Which features Peter Davison facing off against Omega and kind of a sequel to the Arc of Infinity. It's got a great twist in it, some fun performances, and and it gives you a little bit more of insight of who Omega actually really is.
That's a good one. And for anybody who's not familiar, just because it's interesting trivia, Nev Fountain is Nicola Bryant's partner.
Yep.
So anyway, all right, that is it. We're going to be back in 2 weeks, and we're going to be reviewing the whole of season 2, and we're going to be redoing our ratings for every episode, and we'll just talk about the whole thing. And then after that, we've got some other surprises. and we got some news that we're going to cover in the next episode too, because we've got a trailer for the spinoff and we've got some Big Finish news. So we'll talk about all that next time. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. And if you're listening on the podcast after the live show, then thank you. Join us every 2 weeks from this point on and keep watching Doctor Who.
Be seeing you.
We'll see you soon.